Good morning, everybody. This is Shirley Satterfield from the DailyWisdomWords.com writing community. I'm here with Cathy Mellen for a second interview. She's a blogger and an author, and she has written in great detail about the abuse she went through as a child. It's pretty stunning abuse. And I just want to introduce her again today, and she's going to talk about what she went through and how she survived, and about her books that she wrote about the abuse. Good morning, Cathy.
Good morning, Shirley. How you doing today?
I'm doing fine. You look really good this morning, Cathy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can you tell us in more detail about what happened to you? What did your stepfather do to you?
Yes, Shirley, for 6 years of my childhood, I was a trophy in a child predator's sick world. I lived with my birth mother, her boyfriend at the time, and my two older brothers. My baby sister came into the picture when I was about 6.5 years old. And when I was 7, we had moved. And because of that, I was able to figure out the timeline of my life and actually realize how young I was when the abuse started. I was 5 years old when he began putting me to sleep with a cloth. He would occasionally show me photos that he took of myself while I was asleep. I had zip ties on my hand, gray tape over my mouth. Some of them I was in the nude. I would tell my birth mother each and every time, especially telling her about all the times he made me fall asleep. At first, she took it as just a little 5-year-old girl making nonsense. When I was 6, she informed me that he mixed up his adult playing with me. When I was 7, she let me know that he had a sickness that he was trying to control. What he would do to me was vicious. I mean, he began when I was about 6. He started informing me that I needed to be awake. I couldn't sleep through it all the time. And he would terrorize me. He would put tape over my mouth and then rip it off my mouth, telling me to scream for help. And I would scream. And then he would come over and place the tape back over my mouth and in evil manner, just laugh about how nobody was home, that my mother left me with him. When we were 7, we moved, and we moved to a triple-decker home. There was 3 floors, 2 bedrooms on the 3rd floor, 3 bedrooms on the 2nd floor, and then we had the downstairs and then the cellar. And in that time, between ages 7 and 11, I was viciously and horrifically tortured, abused, raped. I was forced into performing oral sex, and it wasn't something that happened easily. He would actually hold my jaw open. He would twist my body. He would fling me. He warned me many times of the ones that he hurt before me and what he would do to little girls. He drilled it in my head that I only had up until age 12 years old to live, and that I had to go with God after that. The lies were just phenomenal. As a child, I have to tell you, I do believe by age 8, I was brainwashed. Um, my birth mother continued to give excuses upon excuses on his actions towards me. There was blood on my underwear by age 9, and she insisted that I started my period. A 9-year-old, that was not the case. It was due because of my abuser. The last attack that I suffered in the hands of my abuser was not in the form of rape, only because I had hid so well that day. I hid in 3 separate rooms, and when he finally found me that day, it was hours later, and he was so enraged. He actually found me hiding inside a toy box. I had threw all the toys on top of me. And I think what got myself caught was that I had peed my pants while I was in that toy box, and he whipped me out by my throat. I don't remember much of that abuse because that attack itself, because I was so badly beaten. I had multiple broken ribs, loss of teeth. My face was blackened and blue. I was confined to my bed for weeks. And it wasn't until weeks later when I realized that he was still living in the house that I started begging my two older brothers and my birth mother to call the police, but none of them did. Um, that all my abuse, no matter how many times I was attacked by that man, it was always thrown back on me. Like, what did I do wrong to piss him off? Why did I make him so unhappy? And I was actually ordered to forgive him. And once I healed, I was then taken down to the cellar because they were going to let me go back to school. And they brought me down to the cellar to show me this hole that he had dug into the wall. And that was to be my punishment should I open up my mouth about anything that went on in that house. And I thought about running away that night, but when I ran up from the cellar, the doors were locked. And back then, there was so many deadbolts on the door that I didn't know how to unlock them all. So I just went up to my room and I waited all night long. And all I thought about was running away. That morning, I ran away at 7 a.m. when my birth mother came into my room to tell me that she was going to work and that I'd be left home with them for the day. And no, I ran. I ran to my friend's house. And back then, I was so um, trained to believe that what was being done to me, I should be ashamed of. So I was always ashamed to say anything that happened to me. But my friend's mother knew something was wrong, and she called my birth mother at work to let her know that I ran to her house scared. And later that day, when my birth mother got out of work, I went downstairs. She was out in her car, and she told me to get in the car. And she wanted to know what I said to my friend's mother. So I told her I said everything. I told her everything, Mom, is what I said to her. And that's why I think I am alive today, because my birth mother didn't bring me back home. She brought me to a cousin's house where she left me for over 2 months. After 2 months went by, the lady she left me with brought me back to her. And this would be at the end of August 1981. And I was dropped off at my house, and my birth mother was pissed that I was dropped off there. She threw me immediately into a car and dropped me off across town to another friend's house, where I stayed there for over a year. And what it is, my birth mother always believed that I had said something to my friend's mother. That week in August that I was dropped off in 1981, that same night, a Janice Philemon went missing across town in the city of Lowell, Massachusetts. Her remains were found months later. Shortly after her remains were found, a Brenda Lacombe went missing from the same stalking grounds that my abuser met my birth mother, at the North Common grounds. When Brenda's Lacombe's body was found a few weeks later, another young girl went missing, and her name was Judith Chattier. Now, all three girls had brown hair and barrettes, just like I did. To this day, over about 37, 38 years later, Judith Chattier's remains are still missing. And my whole life, I believed it was 1980 when I ran and not 1981. And as I got older, Shirley, I would go to my local library to search newspapers for murdered or missing girls from June 1980 to July 1981. And nothing would ever come up. So I would tell myself that I was the only one he abused. And that's, I guess, how I managed to, to live my life as society says. Back in the 80s and 90s, they tell you to move on, get over it, forgive and forget. And that's what I did try to do. In the 1990s, I reconnected with that family that I ran from because I was mad. I was mad that I didn't have a family and I didn't understand what I did wrong. And what it did was give me the years that I needed. It was basically a foundation of stepping stones. There was so many times that I had fights or arguments with my birth mother or two older brothers because when it came to my childhood, they didn't remember nothing. But when it came to their childhood, they remembered so much. So with the broken relationships that continued on, I finally ended up distancing myself from them. And in 2015, when I was in my car accident, I suffered repressed memories. I also suffered personal, permanent physical injuries that are very painful. But what I went through with the repressed memories, Shirley, was as if I relived my childhood. You hear about repressed memories all the time, and it's true. You do smell the atmosphere, you feel the atmosphere, you can hear the sounds, the heavy breathing, everything. I was mortified, and in a matter of about 9 months, I became a total emotional train wreck. I couldn't handle the repressed memories, and what I ended up doing was reaching out to those two older brothers and assuming that they were now in their 50s that they would want to talk. No, they both scattered. They've claimed not to remember anything, and I have not had any communications with them since. Um, what those repressed memories were telling me was the last year of my life living with them was not in 1980, but was actually in 1981, which meant that there was another whole year of abuse that I had forgotten. And those repressed memories, that's what they were, was of my last year, of the abuse and how much my birth family actually did know. I mean, for years, Shirley, I went to both my older brothers begging them to make him stop. There were times I had one older brother who released my hands from a stair banister as he carried me over his shoulders, and I was screaming that he was raping me, but they never came and helped. What I think is that maybe my abuser was paying them money to leave the house or to go out for the day or whatnot. As for my birth mother, she always knew. And for her to deal with me always going to her about her boyfriend instead of taking care of the situation, she actually just abandoned me.
Well,
When
do you think that
her,
your, excuse me, do you think that your stepfather was connected with the disappearance of those girls and the deaths of those girls?
oh yes, yes I do, yes I do,
And
and
which
even some before me, because
and why do you believe that? You talked about a basement. What is hidden in the
yes,
basement?
okay. When I was returned to my birth mother at age 12, I was returned to her for a few months. I had asked her what happened to all my belongings from Pleasant Street that were in my bedroom. And she told me that she threw everything away and that she also had to give things to Dave. Dave was my abuser. She had to give him stuff to put into the cellar wall. And I mean, I was mortified overhearing what she was saying to me. And that's right when she told me that the photos and film that man took of myself over the course of 6 years. Now, Shirley, just so you know, he graduated to a Polaroid camera, and then he graduated to a camcorder. So you're talking 6 years of film and photos of myself as a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11-year-old child in nude positions, and that's what's in that cellar wall. Um, do I think that the remains of Judith Chattier are there? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I did go into the local police department shortly after my repressed memories. I talked with a detective, Gary Dillon, and he has been inside my childhood home. They did find the hole in there, and he's actually gone in a few times. He's gone in with fishing poles, he's gone in with flashlights. The hole does go way underneath the sidewalk, and he also made the comment that it seemed like as if nobody's been in that cellar in over 30 years, and how it gave him the heebie jeebies. And being a detective, that's probably a sign right there. But they have been in it numerous times, but I guess the foundation is very poor, and a lot of rocks are falling. And now with the coronavirus, there's been a little stall, but between the detectives and myself and me getting my story out there, we will be going back into that cellar. One of the things with Judith Chattier, detectives back when she went missing had took a trip down to Florida. They had received some information, and they couldn't find anything. But one of the things is my abuser's first wife and his children lived down in Florida. So there is connections, and he did have an older son who would drive cars for him down into Florida. So um, Do I think that he is responsible for Judith Chadier, Brenda Lacombe, and Janice Philemon's deaths? Yes, I do.
Why?
Yes, I do. They're unsolved. Well, because Janice Philemon went missing in August of 1981. That was the last time I was on Pleasant Street, and he saw me and he charged after me. I truly believe that my birth mother told him that she killed me herself. I do believe in a drunken rampage. He could have mistaken Janice Philemon for me because she was brown hair with barrettes, and she looked like an 11-year-old. Brenda Lacombe and Judith Chadier, I think he did those because he was just the monster that he was. There was another girl that he would threaten me throughout the years, of a little girl that he put in a trash bag and tossed to a field. He told me about many girls that he had killed. He told me of one that he threw in a well. And he told me of a family friend of a young girl that he killed and how he was never even a suspect in it. Throughout the years of him threatening me, and then how many times he tried to do the same to me. One time I woke up and I was in his camper, rolled up in a floor. And when I opened up my eyes, all I saw was darkness and like a tunnel. And when I realized that I was in something rolled up, I slid myself out. And as he was about to drive away in the trailer, I jumped out. So um, when I walked back into my birth mother's house, she thought I was up in my room. And she said, well, how did you get outside? And I told her that her boyfriend put me in a rolled up floor. And I showed her my neck, which was all full of rug burns and from him strangling me. And nope, she sent me up to my room. So unfortunately, I kept going to a mother who didn't care what happened to me. And even as I got older, to talk about what happened, it made me so ashamed. I was humiliated. I was embarrassed to admit what I lived through. So even as a 20-year-old, I kept going to my birth mother because I kept wanting justice. I wanted to go to the police, and she kept doing anything in her power to keep me going. I just didn't realize then, I took it as she was telling me good words of advice, just to move on or whatnot. And, I now realize that she was just stalling me from going to the police. And,
Well, I
even
understand.
though it took me over 30 years.
Understand your birth.
Mhm.
Your stepfather has passed away. What do you want to see
Yes.
happen? What do you want to see happen now? What does justice look like for you?
Well, Shirley, even as a 15-year-old, all I wanted was those photos and film out of that cellar. And I used to go to my birth mother. I'd go to her house, and beg her to come to the police with me. And at age 15, she managed to degrade my soul so bad that I stopped any attempt of ever trying to get down into that cellar up until age 48 when I had the repressed memories. And like I told the detective, I will never get justice for what happened to me. And I know that. But I do also know that there is bundles and bundles, and I mean hundreds and hundreds of photos of myself as a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11-year-old girl buried in that cellar wall. There is film, there is sex toys that were used on me as a child in that cellar wall because my birth mother told me they were there. Do I believe her? Yes, I do. Yes, I do believe that those were put in there. And the thing about my birth mother is that she always had a habit of putting things in bags. So I do believe that everything is secured in a bag. That I do. And when detectives find those, I want them to destroy them all. I just want them destroyed. Shirley, I don't want 2, 3, 400 years from now for those things to be found and them not know who that little girl is in those photos and film. That's me, and I want them destroyed. There is photos after that last beating I suffered with all the black and blues. My birth mother came into the bedroom and took photos of my abuse, that when I was abused that day. And I was mortified. And when I asked her what she was doing, she told me she was taking photos so that she could put them with his other collection so he could remember what he did to me. So like I told the detective, you find those photos, then you can charge my birth mother. So, that's what I do hope is, what I want done with when they do find everything that's in there. I want my birth mother charged. I want the photos and film destroyed. And then I want answers for those victims that, whose families don't have any answers yet. And I do believe that they will find answers without a doubt. So
I
it's
understand you've
horrifying
written,
with.
I understand you've written a memoir about these events. What is the name of your memoir?
Yes, yes. My memoir's in two parts. The first part of my memoir is called A Childhood Tragedy Under a Mother's Watch, and it's from the years 1975 to 1982. It's an in-depth graphic detail of the sexual abuse that I lived through, what was done to me, anything from having a dog chain around my neck to being ordered to call my abuser master. The things that were done to me, it's horrifying, and quite honestly, Shirley, I don't think I could ever rewrite that again. I actually sat down in front of a typewriter and relived my life in 3-month intervals. And I did that to help me better understand the repressed memories I was experiencing. And the more I wrote, the more I started to realize that it was actually my last year living with my family. So the second part of my memoir is called A Life Given to Me. And that categorizes my life from 1982 to 2018, when the detective called me about going into my childhood home and what he found down there and all that. I also have a third part of my memoir that I have started. It's already 30,000 words into it, and I hope to finish it once we get everything in that cellar out of that cellar wall. So there'll be a third part to my memoir, and I look forward to my story getting out there, because I know it will help so many more. I mean, from adults to children to teenagers, unfortunately, child abuse still goes on, sexual abuse, monsters still walk around this world every day. And, it's scary. It definitely is scary.
Well,
And then I also wrote.
I know that your
Mhm.
your books are not published yet, but you do have a blog where you deal with these
Yes,
issues. Can you tell us about your blog, the name of your blog, um, and
my the name of my blog.
I will definitely include it in
Yes.
the description below. Your blog, uh,
Okay, thank you.
a link to your
Yes.
blog. Tell us
The
about your
name of
blog.
Yes, my blog is called Shatter the Silence: A Life Given to Me. It's through Mighty Networks, and in my blog is a briefing of all my write-ins. There is the first part of my memoir, A Childhood Tragedy Under a Mother's Watch. Then there's a little bit on my second part of my memoir, excuse me, A Life Given to Me. And then there is the journey along the way when you're a statistic in a world full of abused children. And that book actually focuses on the many aspects that we face in life every day, and what childhood trauma, how it actually lives into it. There's aspects of being a writer, and how I had a chance of being a writer back when I was 19, but I opted out of it because of my childhood trauma. I didn't want people to know about it. So, the many aspects, from courage to being belittled, being teased, being bullied, it's all in there. Career choices, you name it. And there's also understanding childhood trauma. Do you understand it now? That book is basically a briefing of my memoir, set in 20 pages. And then the rest of the book focuses on me as an adult, looking back on the childhood trauma that I lived through, and all that society, family, schools, friends, social workers, all that did wrong, and what they can better do to address children that are being abused in today's world. And maybe finally someday put an end to this horrific nonsense that goes on with children. Because as children, we're told to move on, forget, and get over it. As adults, we're told to forgive and forget, but yet we spend our whole lives remembering something we will never forget, and searching for forgiveness in some things that are so unforgivable. And that's the one thing, that there are things that are unforgivable, no matter how many people say that you have to forgive to move on. No, you actually can you don't always have to forgive. Some things are unforgivable. And then there's also, I have my poetry, my Christmas in Poetry Land, a lifetime of poetry. I also have Ramblings of a Mishmag blog book, which is multiple different blog posts pertaining to pain management, mental health issues, being happy, being sad, all those kinds of things. And then I also have my Silent Truths, which are illustrated quotes that I wrote pertaining to childhood trauma and all the different quotes. Some quotes I took from out of my memoir and I put them onto an illustrated image, which look really nice. And now that I'm all done writing my memoir, I actually ventured over to the fiction side. And I started writing 33 Cases of Karma, which is 33 short comical stories of when karma strikes back. And I had a lot of fun writing that, Shirley. I really did. I'm glad not to be writing my memoir right now. I took a little time off from writing the third part of my memoir as we're still going over this coronavirus. And, once things settle with the coronavirus, I do hope to be into that childhood home again. Not me personally, but detectives or private investigators, and to get into that hole and finally get what's in there out.
I hope,
So,
I hope so. Well, you stay safe during this coronavirus, and thank you very much for
yes.
this lovely interview. You are a lovely person, and I am really glad
Oh, thank
to
you,
meet
Shirley.
you. And I hope that we
You too,
can have a
Shirley.
friendship. We can have a long distance friendship. And
Oh, most definitely. Shirley, I got your phone number and everything in my phone book. So yes, most definitely.
you, the
Yes.
Daily Wisdom Words community, writers community, is a family. We're not a content mill. We are a family, and we support each other, and we promote each other. And I'm just so glad to meet you.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Oh, me too, Shirley. Samantha's a beautiful woman. I mean, Monday's such a great guy. I love them all. They, so much fun, and I'm so glad to have met you guys, without a doubt.
Thank you.